So we are moving on and we're picking up speed now that we've been able to create our own adjustment brush. Further on in this class, because I have so many brushes that I'm going to be using, what I'm going to do is I'm going to scroll in and I'm going to just pause there for a moment so that you can copy down what the settings of the specific brush are so that you can create your own version of all the brushes that I use in this class and have your own versions of them, in your own Lightroom catalog. So moving forward, if I'm using a brush, I'm going to pause and I'm going to show you those settings so that you can write them down and create your own versions of those. So what are we going to start off with? Well, we've already started with eyes, so I guess we should keep going with eyes. And I think that sounds like a good idea. So we've already done one iris there. So what we can do is we can go ahead and just do the other iris as well. So by clicking on the pinpoint here, I can activate this iris area and I can come over to the other eye and actually start painting in the same effect over on the other eye. Okay? So easy, simple, and done. That looks good. Because I'm happy with that, let's go ahead and press return so that we can accept those changes and move on. So the next thing that we may want to go ahead and fix are the eye whites. So for that, what I'm going to do is use my eye whites max brush, which I have. Here it is, eye whites max. And then, like I told you, I'm going to just go ahead and scroll in so that you guys can see the settings of the eye whites max brush. So here are some things that I've done. I've gone ahead and I've tweaked the color balance of these to be a little bit further away from red and more towards the other side of the spectrum because I want the eye white area to look a little bit fresher and newer and not red, not yellow, because as a person ages, and I found this out from I think it was I don't know, he must have been a doctor or a surgeon or something who also does Photoshop. But he said as a person ages, when a baby's born, the eye whites are very, very blue in nature. And as a person ages, they go from the blue spectrum over to the yellow and red spectrum, which is really interesting. So a really subliminal way that you can add youth to your person in the photograph is to make those eye whites just a little bit closer to blue and a little bit further away from the yellow spectrum, which is so interesting because I never would have thought about changing the color of an eye white other than desaturating it maybe to get rid of the red. I never would have thought about that until this surgeon brought it up to me. So we've got our eye whites max brush here, getting back to this, and I've gone ahead and changed the color. I've increased the exposure and the shadows a little bit. I've decreased the clarity because I want to try and minimize eye veins within the eye whites, and I've decreased a little bit of the saturation. All right? Those are just a couple of the different changes that I've created for this brush. So we'll go ahead and use a flow of 30% for this because I don't want it to go too much, too fast, because that's one pet peeve I have of mine is eye whites that are way too bright. And then I'm just going to paint into the eye whites area, focusing mostly on the portion of the eye whites that is closest to the iris, and then just slightly going into the corners quickly at the end. Now we'll come over and do the other eye over here, spending most of my time right along the edge of the iris and then quickly going into the corners just slightly. All right, then doing the same there. Now at any point, because I have hidden my access points and my mask overlay, if I want to check my mask to make sure that I didn't go over any areas that shouldn't have been whitened, what I can do is just hit the O key, which is going to bring up my mask overlay, and that looks pretty good. Hit the O key again, that's going to hide your mask. And then if you hit the H key, it's going to hide the access points of any of the adjustments. So let's go ahead and check our progress so far by hitting the light switch on and off. And you can see the work that we've done so far on using the adjustment brushes for this example. All right, that looks pretty good. Now there's one other thing that I'd like to take care of, which is just going to be kind of going over the eyebrows and kind of filling them in just a little bit. And what's nice, there's two ways to think about this technique. One is going to be using a very, very small 1 pixel radius brush or 0.1 pixel radius brush and just actually trying to mimic the look of eyebrow hairs. And the other way is going to be using a larger brush with more feather and a softer flow and kind of just doing a broad stroke. I think for anybody using a tablet, what I would suggest is using the first method that I'm going to create. But if anybody's using a mouse or something where you're a little bit more limited, then I think the second method is probably going to be best for you. So we'll zoom in here over to our eyebrow and we'll use our Brows Medium brush. Now, as I said, I'm going to zoom in so that you guys can see these settings and create your own version of this brush. And we'll get started using this. I'm going to switch over to my B brush because I know that that's the brush that by default has a 0.1 pixel radius and it doesn't have any feather. And let's go ahead and just stick with 83% flow. Now I've got my very tiny little brush, which you can barely see. Can you see it there? I have it hovering over her eyelashes. And what I'm going to do is just create the zigzag pattern, which is going to look similar to the eyebrow hairs that she already has. All right, bear with me. I know this is kind of crazy and intense, but we'll get there in a sec. So we've created the illusion of a little bit more eyebrow hairs there. Filling in that eyebrow. Now, I would never suggest you do this with a mouse, but I'm going to give you a mouse version of this tip in just a second. Now, this is my other super secret awesome tip that I'm really, really happy to share with you guys about the adjustment brush. If we go ahead and zoom in here to our adjustment brush, you'll see that there's a little black disclosure arrow at the top of the entire brush. Now, I don't want to go back through here and have to move all of these different sliders to make this effect look more realistic, because we all know right now that this effect does not look realistic. But if I go ahead, oops, sorry about that. If I go ahead and close this disclosure arrow, what this is going to do is it's going to take all of those different sliders within the brush tool, and it's almost going to just basically put them all into one slider. So it's compiling all of those different effects and it's putting it in one slider for you. So that all you now have to do, instead of going and addressing each one of those sliders, is pull down the arrow on one specific slider, and immediately you're going to get rid of basically all of the different things and tone down that brush. You're going to be able to tone down that brush super quick and super fast, and now it's going to look natural in the eyebrow. So that is going to be the first way that I would suggest doing the eyebrows. All right? So we've filled in that area, it looks natural, and that's nice. Now, if we wanted to, and we wanted to just be a little bit broader and not so detailed, we can switch back to our brush A, which is a little bit larger and a little bit more feather and a little bit of a lower flow, meaning that we're going to use broad strokes. And then we can come over and basically just paint in the areas that we just want to overall darken the entire brow. All right, that looks nice. Let's come over to this other brow and just add in some of that darkening. All right, guys, so that's the bulk of what we have done for retouching eyes in this chapter. I hope you guys have enjoyed this, and if you've really liked the type of stuff that we've done when retouching eyes, stay tuned for lesson 11, because that's got some really amazing eye retouching stuff. I just go a little bit further, and I start to do some really powerful stuff with these kinds of tools. So stay tuned.